Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we'll discuss text 5. So Sri Īśopaniṣad text 5. You can repeat the Sanskrit after me. Tad ejati tan naijati tad dure tadvantike tad antarasya sarvasya tad sarvasyasya bhayataha tadejati tanaijati tadure tadvantike tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvayasya bhayataha tadejati tanaijati tadure tadvantike tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvayasya bhayataha tadejati tanaijati tadure tadvantike tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvayasya bhayataha tadejati tanaijati tadure tadvantike tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvayasya bhayataha tadejati tanaijati tadure tadvantike tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvayasya bhayataha tadejati tanaijati tadure tadvantike tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvayasya bhayataha tadejati tanaijati tadure tadvantike tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvayasya bhayataha Om Jnana Thimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakam Nan Shri Gurun Vaishnavanashta Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajevam Sadvetam Sabudhutam Parijana Saitam Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Kṛṣṇa Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanetamscha Jai Shri Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shri Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Tadejati tanaijati tadure tadvantike tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvayasya bhayataha. So this is a very significant verse because, as I told you the other day, the Sri Īśopaniṣad is describing the absolute nature of God. So in this verse, the transcendental activities of the Lord are being described. Now in this verse you may have noted there are many contradictions. Contradictions are not only in the verse but in every line. For example, it is said, Tadejati then Naijati. Ejati means walks, Naijati means he does not walk. So in one line it is said he walks and he does not walk. And in the next line there's another contradiction. He is very far and he is also very near. And in the next line again another contradiction. He is within everything and outside of everything. So contradictions are given over here to show the inconceivable potency of the Lord. Just because we cannot see God with our contaminated eyes, it does not mean that God does not have a form. The abode of the Lord is beyond this material sky, and we cannot see it with our material eyes. So when the Īśopaniṣad says the Lord walks and he does not walk, it is conveying a very important purport. For the devotee who accepts the personal form of the Lord can do anything. He is inconceivable. And for one who is trying to limit God, who is trying to measure God with his material senses using the Dr. Frog philosophy, for him God cannot walk. And for the impersonalist, God is very far. Very, very far. And to the personalist, who recognizes Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hirdeshe Rajuna Tishtati, who recognizes that God is in everyone's heart, for him God is very near. And he is within everything and outside everything. He is all pervasive, and this is the verdict of the devotee. So, the impersonalists, they are always trying to limit God. They don't understand the inconceivable nature of God or that God is capable of doing anything. The devotee recognizes that God is a sentient being. In other words, God is an individual with senses. And this person also has feelings and senses. So Prabhupada in 1932, he wrote a very famous Vyas Puja offering to his Guru Maharaj. And in that famous prayer, Prabhupada said, absolute sentient thou hast proved, impersonal calamity thou hast removed. So Prabhupada said, you have established Bhakti Siddhantaji, that the Supreme is a person, and the concept that God has no form has been destroyed by you. So because this was very important, this was the theme of Prabhupada's offering, that the Supreme is a person with senses, and the so-called talk of impersonalism has been destroyed by Bhakti Siddhantaji's teachings. These so-called Mayavadis, they do not accept that God is capable of descending in a human form and performing his pastimes. But these Mayavadis, they don't accept the form of Kṛṣṇa. There are so many millions of people, for example in India, they will go in front of the temple of Kṛṣṇa, but they will not go inside. Or even if they go inside, they will not bow down. Why? Because they become Mayavadis. They say God cannot descend in the form of a murti. So the Supreme is a person, the Supreme has senses, and when the Supreme descends on this earth, he remains the Supreme. The Lord descends in his Archa Vigraha form. Archa Vigraha. Vigraha means form. So the Lord descends in his deity form. And there is no difference between the Lord and the deity form. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a very nice story known as the story of Sakshi Gopal. There was once a very rich old man who had gone to a place of pilgrimage. And in that place of pilgrimage, the old man had become sick. So one young Brahmin, he helped the old man. The old man was very obliged to this young Brahmin, and he said, you have done so much for me, you have saved my life. What can I do for you? I can give you my daughter in marriage. When the old man came back to his house, he told his family members that I was in difficulty, so this young poor Brahmin helped me, and I have promised my daughter in marriage to this young Brahmin. So the other members of this old man's family, they were very angry. They said, no, we cannot let our daughter be married to this poor Brahmin. So the members of this old man's family, they started telling the Brahmin that you have forced our father to give you this promise that he will marry his daughter to you. You are a rascal. And they started destroying his reputation. So the old Brahmin said, now it is a question of my honor. Because a Brahmin cannot be dishonored. A Brahmin cannot be said that he is a cheater. So the young Brahmin boy said, now I must produce some witness who can testify that I did not force this old man to promise his daughter, but he voluntarily agreed. This promise to marry his daughter to this young Brahmin was given by the old man in front of the deity, which is known as the deity of Gopal. So the Brahmin boy went running to the deity of Gopal. He fell at the feet of Gopal and he said, please save my honor. So the young Brahmin said, my honor is in your hands. You know that this old man voluntarily promised his daughter in marriage. Please testify and save my honor. So the deity of Gopal said, how can I testify? I cannot walk to that man's house. So the young Brahmin said, my dear Lord, if you can talk, then you can also walk. And then the Lord agreed to follow him, and the Lord agreed to testify. So this is known as the story of Sakshi Gopal in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sakshi means witness. So to the layman, when he sees a murti of Radha Krishna, he may say, oh, this is some statue made of brass or wood. But a devotee knows, a Vaishnava knows that this deity is Krishna. There is no difference between the Lord and his Archa Vigraha form. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagwaneti Shabdyate. The Supreme can be realized in different phases, beginning with Brahman, leading on to Paramatma, and eventually culminating in Bhagwan. It is not that regardless of any path you take, the end result is going to be the same. Brahman and Paramatma realizations only give you partial understanding of God's potencies. But through the Bhagwan approach, you understand God completely. Prabhupada gave the example that once in a village in India, a new railway station was built. So the villagers were having a meeting and they were discussing, now tomorrow the first train is going to come in this village, and nobody had ever seen the train before. So they decided they will send a delegation of 3 people to the city, to the railway station, to look at the train. The first person just saw the light in front of the engine, and he ran back to the village and said, I saw the train. People said, what did it look like? And he said, oh, there's a light in the front. The second person waited a little longer. He saw the light in front of the engine. Then he saw the engine, and he thought this was what the train looked like. So he ran back to the village and he gave his explanation of what the train looked like. The third person, he was more patient. He saw the front of the engine, the light, the engine, he saw all the compartments, and then he saw the train leave. So he went back to the village and he gave his explanation of what the train looked like. So of these 3 definitions, whose definition of the train is most complete? Similarly, understanding God through the Brahman and Paramatma features, they only give you partial understanding of God. We must understand that God is unlimited. You cannot say that God only has one son. Prabhupada said, the Christians say that God only has one son, but an ordinary man can have 100 sons. So how can you say that God can only have one son? So the devotee acknowledges the presence of God in the Archa Vigraha Murti form, and the devotee's desire is just to serve the deities. Just like in your Leningrad temple, you have these small Gaur-Nitai deities. Now these deities are not installed deities, but so this does not mean that Gaur-Nitai are not here. It all depends upon the angle of the devotee. If you think that here is God, then this God will also speak to you. And if you say, oh, this is just 10 inches brass deities, or what some people say is Gaur-Nitai, but maybe Gaur-Nitai may not be. And how can God be in this deity? So the point is that we have to accept the inconceivable nature of God and the capacity for God to incarnate in his deity form. Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, they were living underneath a different tree every day in Vrindavan. So Sanatan Goswami, he had deities that he was worshipping in his tree. He was offering him dry chapatis every day because that is all that they ate. One day, a very beautiful young girl came and she brought with her very nice food stuff and gave it to Sanatan Goswami. So, when Rupa Goswami came for lunch, they were both brothers. Rupa Goswami said, "Oh, today you have cooked such a big feast? Where did he get his feast from?" So Sanatan Goswami said, "One very beautiful young girl had come. She gave me all these presents. So I cooked it." Rupa Goswami then said, "This young girl was Srimati Radharani. How did you take service from Radharani?" So the reason I gave this story is because a devotee does not like to take any service from Krishna. A devotee is ready to serve the Lord but never take any service from the Lord. So the Mayavadis, when you tell them that Krishna descends and performs this Divya Leela, superhuman Leela, they say no, God cannot descend. Therefore the Īśopaniṣad is saying he walked and he does not walk. So for the Vaishnava devotee, God can do anything because he understands God is unlimited. But for the Mayavadi, he thinks God is limited. So for him, God cannot walk. Prabhupada said, the Mayavadis are saying, God, you have no form, no eyes, no legs, no hands, no mouth. So for them, God is very, very far. And for the personalist devotees, God is very near. The devotee knows that if he approaches God through the process of devotional service, then God can be understood. And Krishna is within everything and outside of everything. So the contradictions in this verse reflect the contradictions in the vision of the personalist and the impersonalist. The devotee understands the inconceivable nature of God, and the impersonalist, they cannot understand the inconceivable nature of God. Krishna says in the Gita, Janma karma chame divyam evam bibeti tatpataha Jakta deha pana janma naitima miti sarojana. That is, my coming and going from this world, both are completely divyam, transcendental. So, Krishna's coming and going are both transcendental. That means that when Krishna comes to this earth planet, he comes in his superhuman transcendental form. Ishvara Parma Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karna Karanam. This is the explanation by Lord Brahma of the transcendental nature of God. So Ishvara Parma Krishna. There are many controllers, but the supreme controller is whom? Krishna. Sachidananda Vigraha. He is eternal, full of knowledge and blissful. So eternal. You and I are also eternal, but there's a difference between him and us. Nityo netanam chetana chetananam eko bhavanam vidati kama. I am eternal and the Lord is eternal. But the difference is that singular eternal is maintaining all other eternals. So Satchid Ananda, he is eternal, full of knowledge and always blissful. And we are full of ignorance and we are always sad. And this Lord is the cause of all causes, and nobody is his cause. In the Brahma Samhita, many other transcendental attributes of the Lord are revealed. Adyam Purana Purusham Nav Yonam Cha. That thou, he is the oldest entity, he appears ever youthful. Galoka Eva Nivasatmi Akilatma Bhuta. He is situated in the spiritual planet of Gloka Vrindavan. But then nevertheless, he is all pervasive. So we must understand the nature of God through the scriptures. Advaita Machuta Manadi Ananta Rupam. Advaita means there is no difference between his body and soul. If it is a difference between your body and your soul, and my body and my soul, but there is no difference between the Lord and his body. He is Achyuta. He is Achyuta. He does not make any mistake. And Ananta Rupam. He manifests himself in many different forms. Vedesu durlabam adurlabam atma bhakto govindamadi purusam tamam ham bhajami. Lord Brahma further says, Vedesu durlabam. By trying to understand him through the Vedas, it is impossible. Adurlabham Atma Bhakto. But if some or the other, one approaches him through the medium of bhakti, then what is difficult becomes easy. So, with our imperfect senses, we cannot see God. But through the medium of Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, we can understand about God. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ye yathamam prapadayante. All of them as they surrender to me, I reward them accordingly. In other words, Krishna reveals himself in proportion to our surrender. So, if we approach Krishna through the personalist path and we follow his instructions, then this Krishna can be understood. Then we can understand Krishna. So if we approach the Lord through the personalist path, if we accept his divine instructions, then Krishna will reveal himself more and more. So in this verse, it is being described that based upon our understanding, we will understand God. So, if a form of the Lord is carved according to the ingredients that are coming from God, and the murti is installed on the desire of the spiritual master, then that Archa Vigraha is non-different from the Lord. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mataha sarvam pravartate. I am the source of everything material and spiritual. This is the verdict of Krishna. So, the Lord is present in his Archa Vigraha form so that the conditioned souls can easily focus upon him. Prabhupada gives a nice example on this point. He says to post your letter, you can post your letter in the big post office or in the small post box in the corner. So if you have an authorized post box in front of your house and you post your letter there or you post your letter in the big post office, the letter will go to its destination. But if you just put a dummy post box in front of your house and post the letter will remain there all its life. So similarly, if you worship God in his bona fide form, then that deity is non-different from Krishna. God is all-pervasive. When Hiranyakashipu asked Prahlad, where is your God? What did Prahlad say? Everywhere. But Hiranyakashipu did not believe that he could be inside the pillar. Yesterday I read the whole story to you. But the Lord appeared from inside the pillar. So, to the devotee, God is all-pervasive, and to the impersonalist, God is limited. Just as heat and light, they both come from fire. So everything actually is coming from God. So we will end our discussion on this verse. In this 5th verse of the Īśopaniṣad, the author Vyasadeva is giving us further information about the inconceivable nature of God. The contradictions that appear in this verse are really not contradictions, but they appear to be contradictions because there are two schools of devotees, the personalists and the impersonalists. And the personalists, they understand the unlimited nature of God, and the impersonalists, they don't understand. Hare Krishna. Did you all understand this verse? This was a difficult verse.
It is said that God is inconceivable, but it is also said that we can understand him somehow. And what does it mean to understand God in this case?
It is inconceivable to understand God through your material senses. But if you understand God through the process of bhakti, then you can understand him.
Devotees have no any interest in Brahman, in effulgence. And it is also said that devotee will see the Brahman and Brahmatma feature at the same time. Is it true?
Devotee is not interested in Brahman, nor is he interested in Paramatma. Paramatma realization is higher than Brahman realization. A devotee is only interested in Bhagwan feature of God. He will realize the Bhagwan feature if he serves the Bhagwan feature. If he doesn't serve the Bhagwan feature, then he may be standing in front of Krishna, but he won't understand Krishna. There is one very big man in Delhi. Prabhupada used to stay in his house. And in his house he has Radha Krishna Murtis. But he changes the dress, his wife changes the dress, or used to change the dress of the Radha Krishna deities only once a year. And once a year only. So, if you accept that here are Radha Krishna Murtis, here is God, you're not going to change his clothes once a year. So there's so many people, they have Radha Krishna Murtis at home, they live and have Radha Krishna temple at home. Still they won't understand, here is God. So his question is, what's the difference between installed deities and not installed deities? The process is that Krishna appears on the call of the Acharya or the Guru. And when the deity is installed by a bona fide representative of Krishna, then Krishna manifests. Then Krishna becomes fully manifested. And once the deity is installed, you have to have very strict standard of worship. Now, uninstalled deities should also be considered like installed by the devotee. Just like now you have Gaur-Nitai deities here. These are not installed deities. Now your devotee should not feel, oh, these deities are not installed, so I can eat prasad in front of them, or when I come in front of them, I don't have to bow down. Technically, there's a difference between installed and uninstalled deities. In front of the installed deities, you have to be very careful. No offenses. All offenses should be avoided. If they are uninstalled Gaur-Nitai deities, then some offenses may be tolerated. But in the devotee's heart, the uninstalled deities are like installed. Therefore, he doesn't want to risk making offenses even in front of uninstalled deities. And when you see, here is God present in Gaur-Nitai form, then this Gaur-Nitai will even talk to you. There's so many stories I can tell you where the deities have spoken, but there's no time.
There may be some Mayavadi, and externally they may look like a devotee. They may even chant mantra, do something like it seems to be devotional service.
There are many people like this. Even in Vrindavan, there are so many temples where Krishna is being worshipped, but the pujari, he has no love for Krishna. In some temples, even in Vrindavan, whenever the pujari gets up, he does Mangal Arati. So actually the pujari's business is to wake Krishna up at the right time, but that is not their standard. Whenever they get up, they will get ready to do Arati. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Yes, many people will keep Krishna just for business reasons.
How to distinguish between such devotees? In our practical life, maybe, so that meant.
Oh, so your question is how to recognize the Mayavadi devotee. You see that they don't have proper respect for Krishna. Because if they have respect for Krishna, they'll worship Krishna strictly according to Shastra. In Shastra it is said, Mangal Arati must be at fixed time. But they will not do Arati at fixed time. They'll do Arati whenever they get up. They do not worship Krishna like God. If you worship Krishna like God, you do everything perfectly, according to scriptures.
What should devotee do who has not enough time, or who may be sick and cannot worship the deities according all rules, and have he and right to keep deities in his home and so on?
If he cannot take care of the deities properly, don't worry. Just chant Hare Krishna 16 rounds, read and do a little bit of book distribution. That's all. If you can take care of the deities properly, harasho. But if you can't take care of the deities, then don't bother. In Kali Yuga, this chanting is so powerful, this can give you all the effect. You don't have to worry about anything else.
But in this case, can devotee have deities?
Grihastha devotees can have Gaur-Nitai deities at home. But then you should have Mangal Arati at the proper time. Make it like a fixed time. Those who live near the temple, they should worship the Lord in the temple. But in your country, as many of you live away from the temple, some of you are 1 hour away, 2 hours away. So naturally, it is not practical to come here every day. So you can do Artis at home. Harinam is very important. But doing a 16 rounds every day is more important. If you just go on Harinam and don't do your 16 rounds, then not very good.
What is the more important thing? To distribute more books, or to attract more people?
Thakur Bhaktivedanta said a Vaishnava is recognized by the number of devotees he attracts. So both are important. You do book distribution, you're going to attract people, and you preach and you're going to attract people. Okay.
How should we consider the name of the Lord? As one of the features of the Lord, or one of qualities?
It's the same as the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Rama Rama Hare Hare